Today, of course, is the beginning of a very long period of mourning here in the United Kingdom. Originally, I had intended to start broadcasting information about the convention that I just attended, the many interesting people that I met, but instead, it's time for Great Britain, I think, and many of my viewers have told me the same, to focus on this period of mourning, and so therefore, that is what I'm going to do, at least for a time. When I first arrived in the UK in 1977, it was just a couple of months before the Queen's Silver Jubilee. How much has happened since that time, and yet the steadfastness and the reliability of the Crown and of the royal institution really never broke down during that time. As I mentioned in my remarks last night, Elizabeth II had a great deal of personal meaning to me, as I'm sure she did to countless millions across the planet. But in the meantime, there's still work to be done in the United States, a great deal of work on Artemis I. And as everybody knows, I've been very harshly critical of SLS, of NASA, of everything that's been happening up to this point, but it would appear that there is a new plan coming forward to repair this ailing rocket and finally get it into orbit that I think might actually work. Hello, YouTube. I'm the Angry Astronaut, and this is... So yesterday, contrary to my expectations, Jim Free, the NASA Associate Administrator for Exploration Systems, announced that the agency was going to attempt to launch SLS on either September 23rd or September 27th, and this is something that simply could not be done if the vehicle was going to be hauled back to the VAB. And indeed, they are going to try to effect repairs on the pad. They seem to be pushing forward very aggressively and for very good reasons. The longer they let this rocket sit as it is, the more risky the launch becomes, especially when it comes to the solid rocket boosters. They will have to be unstacked and restacked in a very short amount of time if they don't get this rocket off the pad, which will represent a tremendous delay. So what they intend to do is pretty simple. They're going to remove and replace seals on two liquid hydrogen lines that connect the SLS core stage, and then after that they're going to perform a tanking test, not a wet rehearsal, but just a simple tanking test to make sure that the problem is actually solved. The hydrogen leak has really been the big ongoing problem with SLS ever since it arrived at the Cape. There were hydrogen leak problems in both of the wet rehearsals, a problem which I actually criticized and recommended that NASA proceed with another wet rehearsal before they actually tried to launch, because obviously they wouldn't be able to launch if they still had a hydrogen leak. But what do I know, right? In any event, NASA now obviously needs to correct this problem, since it has, of course, occurred during the wet rehearsals and both the launch attempts. But this particular time is a little bit different because they actually were able to track down the source of this particular leak, and it is the seal on a quick disconnect fitting for one liquid hydrogen line. It's only 20 centimeters in diameter. The smallest things can incapacitate the biggest rockets, but in any event, they will also be replacing another line that's 10 centimeters in diameter. These run from the ground systems, by the way, something that I have been criticizing constantly over the last few months, to the core stage of SLS. And this is something that can be taken care of rather quickly as long as there aren't any weather problems. Once all of this is done, NASA will attempt a tanking test, hopefully scheduled for September 17th. And it's once again not a wet rehearsal, just to fill up the core stage and the ICPS with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to verify that the seals are indeed fixed. Now, it's important to note, and a little bit frustrating as well, that none of the wet rehearsals actually got all the way to T-1 second, again because of hydrogen leak problems. It would have been nice if they could have really rectified this problem before they attempted to launch, but then again, arguably this particular problem was not in existence at the time of the wet rehearsals, but instead was the result of an overpressurization during the most recent launch attempt, where they put 3 times as much pressure on the fuel line as it was designed to take. It was a mistake, and who knows, that may have been the cause for it. It seems like a huge coincidence to me if it wasn't, but in any event, there is yet to have been a completely successful wet rehearsal. That being said, though, they are implementing some changes to the propellant loading process that will be, as they say, kinder and gentler, and it more resembles what was done during the green run. It reduces the pressure and flow changes. Not really sure why they don't do that as a matter of course. Seems to be sensible, but in any event, they're doing it now. And that NASA commented, quote, "We noticed that when we temper the changes, we're better able to manage those leaks," unquote. Well, let's certainly hope so, but there is, of course, an elephant in the room that nobody's really talking very much about, and that is the flight termination system. As of right now, the FTS system has not been certified for any launch, period. The U.S. Space Force's Space Launch Delta 45, which operates this particular area of NASA, these particular pads, needs to approve an extension of that certification without sending it back to the VAB. This is not standard operating procedure, but it can be done. They've submitted a waiver package apparently, but they have not yet received a reply. The flight termination system is, of course, absolutely vital if this rocket should go off course and come crashing down onto inhabited areas, God forbid, during a significant anomaly. But if it is approved, and it does seem that there's good reason to approve it because it's just a matter of the batteries and the viability of the FTS system, and everything's looking very good on those right now, then we could be looking at a launch on September 23rd as early as 6:47 a.m. This launch window lasts for 2 hours. It would be what's called a short class mission that would end with Orion splashing down on October 18th. And indeed, if they manage to accomplish this, after all of these problems without having to haul the rocket all the way back to the VAB, implement all kinds of other tests and fixes, if they can actually patch this together as rapidly as they're talking about and get the rocket off the ground, that would be a W for NASA. A conditional W, but nevertheless, definitely a win. And if the mission goes off without a hitch, if it proves that Artemis, that SLS, that Orion, that everything about this vehicle is viable, is effective. And I have a feeling that SLS will actually perform fairly well. Everything that's happened up to this point has again been mostly ground systems, not the rocket itself. The rocket appears to have been performing very well since the green run. So if they can get the damn thing off the ground, I have a feeling that this mission may go off extremely well. By the way, this particular stage of the mission that you're watching right now, where the ICPS separates from the booster and then drives the Orion towards translunar injection orbit, this is going to be tracked and confirmed by the Goonhilly Earth Station in the United Kingdom, which I just toured. If you haven't seen that tour, by the way, check it out. Amazing stuff that this station is going to be doing for Artemis, not just in terms of getting Orion to the moon, but also for providing communications for 6 of the 10 CubeSats that the vehicle has on board. And that's just a small part of what Goonhilly is going to be doing. Again, check out the tour, linked in the description and at the end of this video. But if all of this goes very well, I do feel that SLS will be the rocket that hauls Artemis to lunar orbit for the foreseeable future. It's going to be a while before Starship becomes a fully human-rated rocket capable of carrying astronauts all the way from the Earth to the moon. So SLS is going to have to be the interim rocket in the meantime. However, if this test ends up being a failure, if the rocket blows up at launch or at some other time, it's going to be a dagger in the heart of the entire program, not just to SLS, but to Artemis in general, and that's something that none of us want. Smash that like, hit that subscribe, please once again hit that notification bell button, it's important to my channel, and also check the description for various ways to support my ongoing ongoing coverage of European spaceflight, and as always, stay angry about space.